love, rivers cannot wash it away. If one were to give all the wealth of his house for love, it would be utterly scorned.
Thank you, Govin and Anne. And right now I would like to invite Pastor Joyce to come and to present the exhortation. Pastor Joyce.
Good evening, everybody. Especially good evening to Mr. Andy and Mr. and Mrs. Ong, and of course all the family friends of Benedix and Evelyn. You all look awesome. Can you turn to your neighbor and say you look awesome? You do. I hope Ben said it nice and loud. All right, well, several thousand years ago, we had the very first wedding in a garden. And Ben, which garden was it? He said the Garden of Eden. Is very good. He's so nervous he's forgotten his Bible knowledge. 3,000 years later, our Lord Jesus Christ attended his very first wedding. And in that wedding, he had his very first miracle, which he turned water into wine. Then today, Ben and Evelyn, you have chosen a beautiful resort. As you can all see, this is indeed very lovely, lush and green. And they've chosen to have a garden wedding. And I was looking at this and I thought, wow, if man can create such a beautiful place for a wedding, how much more must the Garden of Eden be? Anyway, I think Evelyn, you give Eve a good run for her money for the most beautiful bride. Isn't that right, Ben? Good and right answer is that, yes. Say with more enthusiasm next time. That's right. Okay, well, marriage was and is God's idea for a man and a woman, and God designed marriage. It is not good for a man to be alone. I think we're all familiar with that verse. And so God went on to say, I will make him, in this case Ben, a helper suitable for him. And we know this account from the book of Genesis, how God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. Ben, do you like sleeping? He loves sleeping. Well, maybe Ben fell into deep sleep one day, and not in your case, but in Adam's case, God took a rib out of Adam's side and created the woman called Eve. In your case, Evelyn, close enough to Eve though. And he brought Eve to Adam. So marriage is divinely designed by God. We can say in this case, made in heaven. Genesis 2:24 says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And they shall become one flesh. That's a oneness of heart, a oneness of soul, a depth of intimacy and commitment and dedication to one another, to the exclusion of all others. Ben and Evelyn chose Matthew 19:6, which we just heard well read, and that echoes the same idea as what we just heard in Genesis 2. So they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. This verse shows that God has a part in marriage. He has a part in not just the wedding, but in marriage. And marriage is definitely designed by God, made in heaven. So first point, marriage is something of God's idea. He created, he came up with it. Now, so on one hand, we say, okay, God created this idea called marriage. But we know that Ben and Eve, as well as all the other married couples here, we have our part to play too. Am I right? Okay? So men and women, husbands and wives, we have our part to play. So although marriage was created and designed by God in heaven, we must work it out on earth. So Ben and Evelyn, you are about to embark on this lifelong journey called marriage. And the love that you're about to vow to one another in a few short moments needs to be practically lived out day after day. Please recap, for it says, many waters cannot quench love. Rivers cannot wash it away.